Hey, I'm Bill Fanter, founder of Options Action, and you're watching the weekly watch list. If you'd like to get access to this content before it goes live on YouTube, just hit the first link in the description to sign up for our free weekly emails. All right, let's jump right in. Welcome back, everybody. So this is going to be the watch list for Monday, October 20th. Let's go ahead and start out with earnings for next week. There's a couple notable ones that I think you want to keep an eye on. First and foremost is going to be some of the regional banks that are going to still be reporting, whether it's Zions or HBT, Wintrust, BOK Financial. There was a lot of noise this week around some credit delinquencies and charge-offs regarding fraud, primarily within the auto industry. So if you've also been watching the news, the average car in the United States is now north of $50,000, which is insane, right? With auto loan rates at 8-9%. I mean, you're talking the average car payment now is somewhere between $800 and $1,200 a month. Just blows my mind, right? So we also have Capital One, East West Bank, and a couple more that are going to follow. So I'm going to talk more about the banks in a minute. Other notable ones you really want to keep an eye on, Netflix. This thing has just been hovering in a consolidation zone. See if they get another leg up. A lot of it is going to be dependent upon future outlook, and then the market is going to be heavily anticipating Tesla. So we're going to look at the chart on Tesla, and you're going to kind of see where it's stuck. Then we got a couple more airlines, whether it's American, Southwest, Alaska, could be good plays. And then on the auto sector, again, back to what we're going to want to listen for is what's going on with tariffs and what is going on with the cost of automobiles. So we know we got a lot of pull forward for the EV as the EV credit expired on September 30th. So we have General Motors, we have Ford, we have AutoNation. Okay, those would be ones that I would be tracking to. And then we'll see what's going on with Intel. Obviously, a lot of capital infusions there. So quite a bit going on with earnings. But then the following week is when we should start to get into tech earnings, which is what's really going to move the needle. So let's go back to the charts. And speaking of tech, I'm going to start on the futures. I did clean up some of my lines, so please double check them. You'll note that this week there was way more volatility as the VIX got above 20. So I wanted to sharpen things up a bit. But my price levels looked really good here on NQ. Didn't have to make too much of a move here. But you could see where the market is, for the most part, observing all of the liquidity zones. Okay. Now you could, if you wanted to, go down here and put in an interim level, right, to keep an eye on. If you just wanted to say, hey, last week this was kind of interesting, right? The market pushed down to here and then we reverted higher. So interim levels I'll always have is a different color, but you can see they pushed all the way down, up. We came back down to this interim level. Now, this also, if I had to guess, probably, it was interesting. It was a daily level. So it doesn't even have to be interim because it's a new daily. And look at where it actually came from. Right back here. So I'm going to leave that as a solid blue line on my charts, and we'll watch how price respects that. Okay, so I'm always just looking left and seeing where did the market bounce in the past, where did it bounce in the past, and when we get to the level, does not mean you just automatically get into a trade. You need to pause, watch price action, watch what's going on, especially if you're going to trade the Qs. What's going on in the futures with NQ? What's going on with Google? What's going on with Apple, Microsoft, NVDA, right? We need to be watching what's happening in these larger tech stocks to say, is this where we're going to get the bounce, or are they also going to flush their level, or are they below a level to keep heading lower? Okay, so that's where I'm at with NQ. ES, I did make a lot more changes on ES. A lot of this had to do with the regional banks this week. They really kind of threw, not a monkey wrench into things, but created more volatility and more price instability. So let me show you what price instability looks like. And this is not what we want to see, okay, when we're trying to trade the market, which is also why the VIX is higher than normal, okay? This is a 1 day, okay? Look at these huge wicks to the upside and to the downside with regard to the futures data. Versus here, you have more body, more body, more body, more body, a fair amount of wick, but more body, more body, more body, right? And then you get this flush. But when you have this whipsaw back and forth, this is where things get really dangerous, right? Where the market is pretty much in a tight range of 67.15. Look at this candle body, and then look at the lows, right? Where they can't get below 66.59, right? Here, right? We're all in this consolidation zone. Yeah, did they push all the way down? Of course they did, but then they bought it right back up. So if you're trying to take puts down here or down here, you're probably going to be in trouble, right? You can't be taking puts here thinking that we're going to go lower. So you have to get the puts at the top of the range to go lower. You have to get the calls at the bottom of the range to go higher. You can't be buying calls. You can, don't get me wrong, right here and think it's only going here. You want your call somewhere down here where you are watching the buying pressure to come in. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at SPY and QQQ. Again, I did move some of my levels, so take a look at them. We're holding, fairly steady right in the 660 range. Okay, we did get the big push down on Thursday around the regional bank scare, and then the market sold off and then recovered overnight. For the most part, they recovered 80% of the move down. Okay, so which is a good thing. When we're on a 1 hour time frame, again, always zoom out to the higher time frames. What are your EMAs telling you on the higher, right? Sure, you could go in calls down here and get a pop higher, but you'd be better off to take puts up here when the 9 crosses the 21 on a 1 hour and just ride it lower. Same thing here, right? When you get the cross, ride it higher to the upside, and then look at the exact same thing on the 15-minute and then the 5-minute charts. But for the most part, we're holding in this range and we're not that far off from the all-time highs of 673. I mean, we're only 10 points away, which is, fairly remarkable. QQQ, is still holding within this range. We can't seem to get above this 607, right? They tried to push it up here on Wednesday, tried to push it up here on Thursday, and then literally we just failed and went lower again when the entire market was selling off. Even with technology, it is hard for it to go higher when the broader market is taking profits on a banking scare, okay? Which is why, personally, I'm constantly watching the banks to say what is going on with these guys. Now, last Friday was your huge market sell-off, on the 100% tariffs, and then they just kind of wiped that out. They're like, okay, no big deal. So we were in a good upward structure. We broke the structure. We need to go higher for this to resume, okay? Otherwise, we'll want to watch, is this a reflection point for us to have a high, a low, a lower high, and then ultimately come back down here to a lower low. Now, we're probably not going to get that unless we get more China tariff news or tech earnings start to come in, but that's not going to be for yet another week. So let's take a look at some of the individual names, and I'm going to stick with the same ones that I talked about for the most part last week because they've been very tradable, okay? So I'm not venturing off and going into, what is the market chasing or, what else is out there. And we could look at some of them, which is not a problem. But if you just stick with the same basket of stocks, you will do so much better than trying to trade something that you have no understanding what the characteristics or the behavior of the market move is, right? I mean, it's like if you're constantly trading SPY and QQQ and Apple and, Google and NVDA, then you're all of a sudden, okay, well, let's go trade Tesla. Most of the time you're going to get wrecked because you don't understand the characteristics of the stock, which is why I constantly keep coming back to the same handful of names. So Apple, holding this 244 level was good. Kind of back in an uptrend, but for the most part, we have a lot of sellers sitting up here. We do have some buyers below. I'd probably be more in favor of puts than calls. I don't know that there's a rationale. Apple pushed higher on the fact that they sold out all of the latest iPhones in China, and therefore the market took that as good news and they ran it up. Again, but you're looking at buying calls here. Can you do okay here? You can, but you should not be thinking about taking calls here. Okay, this is where you just say, I'm just going to sit and wait for us to come up here and take some puts and come back down into demand. Let's look at Amazon. Amazon has actually been pretty poor when you look at the overall structure of this market, right? We have a lot of buyers down here at the 209 level. 210, right? And then heading even lower. But we don't have a lot of buyers holding this thing up, and we are in a downtrend, right? High, low, lower, high. We didn't get the lower low. We got a lower high. We have the same low. We still have the same kind of lower high, right? Now we're trying to make a new lower low. So this thing, I mean, just trajectory-wise, and again, not to say that and none of these can't turn around, but this thing is in a downtrend, right? So keep an eye on what is the directional bias of the stock, okay? Which is not bad, you know, and could be a really good wedge, right? Where we're holding the support here, right? We have a price level here, but I want to take calls here, right here, or I want to take calls if we could get a break above the trend line, use a support level to then go higher. Okay, so again, zoom out. I'm on a 1 hour time frame and the market is kind of trending lower. Let's look at Microsoft. This one's been holding steady. We haven't seen a lot of price movement between this. You know, it's moving at about $5, you know, which is a good 1% move, but buyers and sellers are balanced here on a 1 hour time frame, right? My buyers and my sellers are on top of one another. So for me, that would be a stock that I would just say, I don't want to trade, right? We want to see sellers up here, buyers down here, and I have black open space for price to move freely. So there's nothing there from what I can see. Let's go to look at Google. Again, we're pretty much back to these all-time highs. Again, same thing, right? And even if I turn off the supply and demand, the risk to reward is, in my opinion, is not in your favor, right? QQQ is not making new all-time highs, whereas Google is, but Google's not going to drag up the entire ETF, right? What is going to drag up the ETF is going to be something, excuse me, like an NVIDIA. NVIDIA, again, was up here at 195 last Friday, and it is still now somewhat in a downtrend, right? We have a high, a low, we have a lower high. We are still holding here, not a lower low. We got a lower high. We do have a lower low, okay? Then we had a lower high, a lower low, and then this was on Friday. So the question you got to ask yourself is this a bounce or is this a turning point for NVIDIA to go to the upside? Now, again, we don't have a lot of sellers till we get up here in this range, so we could get a move up, but I don't want to be buying calls here. I'd like to be buying calls here. So kind of watch the pattern, right? High, low, lower high, holding the low, lower high, holding the low, right? Lower high, holding the low. So where do you want to buy? You want to buy on the low. Down here, okay? So it's just being patient and saying, well, I'd love to come here to buy so that I can go all the way up here. But I don't want to be buying here and then they get to this pivot, right? This pivot right here, and then they sell it all the way back down here. So just be patient and watch the overall structure of the market and you'll do incredibly well, okay? AMD has been ripping higher, more, you know, news on investments, so on and so forth. I would not touch this. Premiums are too expensive. We're at all-time highs. It doesn't make any sense to me, being that this was a $40 stock, you know, a year ago. I mean, it's had a great run, great story. Potentially taking revenue and sales from NVIDIA. I don't know. We'll see what's happening. But it is in an uptrend, okay? And then you kind of have this top up here that you're going to want to keep an eye on. So, but premiums are too expensive. Personally, wouldn't trade it. Let's take a look at Meta. Meta's still somewhat in a downtrend, right? I mean, we're holding this price level of 705, so you can see this 693 was really solid here during the week, okay? We have a fair amount of buyers, not a lot of sellers. Premiums are going to be more expensive in this, but again, I know that I think it was one of the analysts upgraded the price target, I think, to 900. We do have earnings coming up on the 29th, so we still have another week. So we're probably going to see just this consolidation back and forth here between 705 and 723. So that's definitely something that you could trade against. But buy your calls down here, right? Don't buy you can buy calls here, but your best bet is to say, I'd rather have them here. So be picky, be selective, right? Do I want puts here? You can look at them, but again, they're going to be expensive. Where do you ultimately want puts? Right, if we could get up here at a higher range where they could not hold this, right? And then they're trying to push it higher, but I would not want to get caught in a short squeeze
going up. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the banks. So again, this week, a lot of scare around credit, private credit. Market did not like that the other day and sold off hard. JP Morgan Chase coming into a lot of demand. 296, they pushed it down here. They pushed it a little bit lower to 292, and then we were able to move higher. If the banks can recover, then the overall S&P should be able to move higher. So keep an eye on the banks this week, okay? It's going to be very important to see that these money center banks stabilize, okay? We did get a good bounce here off of Bank of America. Again, overdone. So the one thing you'll learn with bank stocks is when they get scared, they just throw out the baby with the bathwater. They don't ask any questions, and they're just like, we're done, right? We're not going to get caught in this Silicon Valley, First Republic debacle like we had last year. So we got a fairly wide trading range here. On this one, I don't like calls. I don't like puts. All I'm saying is just kind of watch it for a catalyst as to the overall breadth of the market. Wells Fargo, again, on earnings, they had really good earnings, right? Made almost a new all-time high. They were able to push through it the next day. Credit scare comes in, they drop. So what do I want to watch on this one? This one, a simple Fibonacci, right? If you want to do a fib from a pivot low to a pivot high, look at where this is bouncing. Exactly at the pivot, 82.39, right? So this one probably is a safe buy to go higher. Now, if we lose the fib, right, we are then heading lower. So you want to watch and make sure it's going to maintain this golden zone. So I would not be a buyer of calls. I'd really want to see us buy calls down here at 81.20, right, or 80.97 at my price level, right? Let price come back in. You can also see here, and again, the bank stocks move really slow. So if I wanted to do an interim level and say, where are we at that I would watch? Right here, right, on a 1 hour time frame. Okay, I feel pretty good about this. They're holding it, right? This was this pivot before they dropped it. They tried to use it as support, use it as resistance, and flush lower. So watch this $83 range right in here. And then let's go ahead and look at DPST. So I played the regional banks. I did buy some equity. Okay, I think I'm in at $82 and change. I bought it where I was expecting us to hold this 81.57 price level, which we were doing for a good period of time for 1, 2, almost 3 hours. And then the credit scare came in and it was lights out, right? And where do they take us down to? $70. So if you were in the Discord and picked up some at 70, congratulations, you're already up, 11, 12%. Where do I want to see this thing run to? Again, I think this was overdone to the downside. But if I'm going to use a pivot, right, and just say a price target from where do I think we're headed back to, I'd like us to at least get back to 86.30, right? And that's at a price level for a 50% fib. So I don't think it's going to be unrealistic for us to get here, reclaim 90, 95, and it was just at literally $100 and some. So the one thing you need to learn with when you're going to buy bank shares, you buy them on a fire sale. Okay, we're up here at 118 on September 5th, right? I mean, just imagine this. If we go from 80 to 118, that's a what, 40, 50% move? Not quite, 40, 120. So about a 35, 40% move. That could be a good one, right? Now, you can't buy calls or puts in this. You can, but the bid ask is super wide. So I just picked up some equity. So this is what I'm going to be watching to decide 86.30. Do I want to take some profits, right? Because I got in at 82. Not a big move, but it's going to be a huge retracement from where I was. So those are some things to keep an eye on. Watch the banks this week. Again, we need this credit scare to go away in order for the entire market to move higher. But when the banking system is not healthy, doesn't matter what's out there, right? They just sell everything. And we saw that the other day. So with that, everybody, size down on your positions. We're not going to have any economic data this week until the government reopens. If it does reopen, then we got to watch for a slew of data that could be coming forth. But the question is, how long will it take them? So with that, hope this helps and have a fantastic weekend. Take care.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, make sure you sign up for the free weekly watch list emails to get early access before the video drops here on YouTube. See you next time.